First off, I want to start this video by thanking Disney and Marvel Studios for giving me a lot of content to talk about, or at least a lot of topics for me to turn into content to talk about and share with you guys, the viewers. So it seems that Robert Downey Jr. is reportedly making his MCU return in the Ironheart TV show. And this does make a lot of sense, which I'll get into in a bit. But before I get into that, I want you guys to go ahead and follow my channel by clicking that big old red subscribe button. I've noticed that 60% of you who are not subscribed watch my videos. So if you go ahead and do that, please press subscribe, click like, share this video if you can. It really helps the channel a lot. And lastly, go to my Discord where we talk about comic book related content, movies, games, and more, and just topics. We got all the channels you need for you to discuss about those kinds of topics in my Discord. The invitation to that link is down in the description box below. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get right back into the topic. So Robert Downey Jr. reportedly makes his MCU return in the Ironheart TV show. Now this is being reported, and it seems like everything that we get from Marvel Studios, all the news from Marvel Studios and the MCU and Disney and all that stuff, so far has only been reported, so none of this can be actually confirmed, but it does make sense when we look at it from like the comic book standpoint. So I'll explain in a second, but first let's go ahead and read this article. Tony Stark only met his noble end last spring, but there are already plans afoot at Marvel to bring Robert Downey Jr. back as Iron Man. We Got This Covered has been bringing you updates on the situation for the best part of a year now, and over the past week, we were able to deliver the MCU news that the studio and the star are close to coming to a deal to get Downey Jr. to return to the MCU, specifically in an Ironheart TV series. We've been told that his previous hefty demands have been lowered since the box office failure of Dolittle, meaning Marvel is now confident that negotiations can go smoothly. And if they do get him to sign along the dotted line, then Downey Jr. would be taking part in a Disney Plus show for Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, the teen tech prodigy who builds her own Iron Man suit in the comics and becomes the next generation's armored Avenger. At least, that's according to the same sources who told us Han is returning to the Fast and Furious series and Ahsoka Tano will cameo in The Mandalorian Season 2, both of which are now confirmed. Originally created by Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Deodato, before being revamped by Eve Ewing and Kevin Libranda, Riri was only introduced into the Marvel Universe in 2015, but she looks set to already make her leap to the screen. WGTC reported last May that Ironheart was coming to the franchise, with MCU Cosmic confirming in November that a D+ show was in the works. D+ show, I'm sorry. That made me laugh a little bit. My apologies if anybody that's an Ironheart fan out there. I actually predicted that, I actually did make a video a little earlier this year. I think it was right around when Endgame was released. It was shortly after Endgame was released that I speculated that we should probably be getting an Ironheart TV series very soon. It only would make sense, at least, to have a successor of Tony Stark Iron Man. So, yeah, I'll get into that in a second as well. In the comics, Riri was mentioned and aided in her crime-fighting career by an AI version of Tony, who was in a coma at the time, the same device that could be used for the MCU, which would explain how Downey Jr. would reprise his role following Endgame's conclusion. Essentially, he'll be doing what Paul Bettany's Jarvis used to do for him back when the franchise first began. Ironheart has yet to be officially announced, so there's still a while to go before it hits screens. But for now, we can tell you that all the signs are pointing to Downey Jr. not being done with the MCU just yet. And how exciting is that? Well, this is very exciting, and for a few reasons. One, if you ever read any of the Ironheart comics, Downey, or at least Tony Stark, excuse me. I'm sorry, every time I think about Tony Stark, I always think about Downey Jr. because that guy is essentially Tony Stark in real life. So Tony Stark did serve a bit of a role, but more of an AI for Ironheart in the comics. And he was just this bluish looking hologram that would interact with Ironheart. But for the most part, they were pre-recorded. And now I saw a video earlier today from Everything Always, which is a guy I follow. He talks about these kinds of things all the time. His videos are always listed as breaking, this and this is happening and this and that is happening and stuff like that. From what he said, it made a lot of sense. He said that the AI, at least Tony Stark AI, should be more of a pre-recorded kind of thing where it's not exactly Downey interacting with Riri Williams Ironheart, but more like having pre-recorded messages ready for Riri Williams, like questions and whatnot. So it wouldn't exactly be a very smooth performance, but rather more of a robotic kind of formal performance, because it kind of takes it out. Like it really takes away from the death. Like it makes the death go in vain from the comics. I mean, from the movie, excuse me, Endgame. We don't want that death that Tony Stark had in Endgame to be like worth nothing. We want it to still, we want to still feel that, you know, we want to still feel that the death had an impact on us and all the other characters in the MCU. So rather than Tony Stark being an AI and interacting like a person would with another person normally, then there wouldn't be a point. Then they might as well just have kept him alive for the series. But having him with pre-recorded messages and operating in that way where you still know that he's dead, it would be a lot better. It would make more sense. So it wouldn't be exactly as smooth as let's say Jarvis was when he would interact with Iron Man, Tony Stark in the movies, but it would be more of like a pre-recorded kind of thing. Like this is something he has prepared, because Tony Stark was already prepared to die. Like he was preparing himself. So I'm pretty sure he had contingency plans, pre-recorded audio clips of him moving around and talking and stuff like that. So I guess that's the capacity that Tony Stark would return to the MCU. Just like it happens in the comics, you know, characters like in the movies have died and have returned in some capacity, in some way. Like Scarlet Witch, snapped off, came back. Sam Wilson, snapped off, came back. Now he's getting his own series. Loki, we thought he died in the first Thor movie, came back. And then we thought he died when he got his neck snapped by Thanos. Now he's coming back. He's got his own series. He faked his death in even the Thor: The Dark World. So Loki technically has, like, I guess you could say died twice, but faked his death twice and actually died. And now an alternate version of himself is coming back, and now he's getting his own series. Kind of like how these things happen all the time in the comics, where characters just die and miraculously just appear in another event or in their own spin-off comic in some way, in some form. I don't know. But anyways, this is really interesting. I mean, I can only speculate, and I kind of like Everything Always' idea. I don't know the guy's name that runs that channel. I love his idea about Tony Stark coming back, rather more of like a straightforward kind of AI where he has pre-recorded messages, rather than him interacting normally with another person, like another person would with another person. I'm sorry if I confused you there for a second. So he kind of brought up this point where, like, well, you might as well just keep him alive if he's going to be interacting with people normally like he would have if he was alive. So that's pretty much my take, or at least my agreement with Everything Always. And I wanted to also share that as well, and you know, give you my 2 pointers or my 2 cents or whatnot. And I don't think he's gonna be appearing all that much in Ironheart, you know, because Robert Downey Jr. is expensive. He's a very expensive actor. The MCU Disney literally spent almost like $1 billion on him. He would get paid like literally chunks of change. Like we're talking about 30, 50, 40 million dollars per film just to make an appearance. He was the most overpaid actor for the past few years. And out of all the Marvel cast members, he was the one that got the big change. So, yep. If they're going to have Robert Downey Jr. come in, he's probably going to be doing a lot of voice work, maybe some capture, so that way they can project him in the series of Riri Williams, you know, Ironheart, just to have him be more of like a hologram. So they're going to probably record him in a green room and then just post it there in post-production. And then we'll have the character of Riri Williams interacting with nothing, basically. So, yeah, you let me know your thoughts. Comment down below. Let me know what are your thoughts about this. You think Robert Downey Jr. is really coming back? You think he's really not done with the MCU? If anything, I can look at it this way. Robert Downey Jr. is going to keep getting work from Marvel Studios and Disney. And that's a good thing. And I think he should go ahead and take on the role and continue on. But he would be more on the sidelines. So that's pretty much my thought. Anyways, comment down below, guys. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click on bell notifications so y'all don't miss anything. And as always, I will see you all in the next comic panel.